I've spoken quite a bit about how the Liberal Party is struggling on a factional level, unable to unify around the new leader and constant internal divisions just taking up all their time in the news. They're struggling on the policy front, unable to really come up with a platform yet that they're going to hopefully have together to present to the Australian people by 2028. But I think there's another core issue that they have, which I haven't really talked about in depth because of how obvious it is, and that is that on a federal level, the Liberal Party is struggling from one of the shallowest talent pools that it has ever had. Now, it may seem superficial to focus particularly on the people rather than the policies of parties, but if we're being perfectly honest, a lot of what makes an election winnable is the preferred PM. It is a core part of it, as much as we might not want to think about that in an ideal democracy, is that in addition to what you're putting forward, a key component is your messenger. The person at the front of the party who is sending the message, who is talking to the public, that person needs to have a level of skill to know how to navigate that space and make your policy proposals appealing and actually present them in a digestible way. And look, the reason that I'm talking specifically about this now, to get a sense of how bad the situation is for the Liberal Party when it comes to their meagre talent pool, is that originally I was going to make a video called something along the lines of who can save the Liberal Party? Like, who is the potential leader in the federal party who could take over from Lay and actually turn things around? Not Angus Taylor, not Andrew Hastie. Who is some moderate, or at least somebody who understands the situation when it comes to federal politics at the moment, who could take over the party and maybe lead it to a potential victory, if not in 2028, then maybe sometime in the 2030s. And then it kind of hit me, there's literally no one. And look, yeah, you can blame this on 2025, but I think really the talent issue started in 2022. And 2025 and 2022, similar elections in a way, but 2022 was really the point at which the future of the Liberal Party was seemingly gutted entirely. Because if we go back and look at 2022, I think it's kind of undeniable, and I'm sure many of you will agree, is that the story of the night, beyond the change in government, was really what the Teal wave did to high-ranking members of the Liberal Party's moderate wing. The three potential future leaders and very high-ranking moderates that could have taken over would have been, assuming they'd held their seats, would have been Josh Frydenberg, Trent Zimmerman, and Dave Sharma. You may not like those three. I'm personally not a fan of two of them. But those were potential leadership favourites going ahead, or at least certainly Josh Frydenberg would have been. But the point is, these three all could have been moderate leadership contenders who might have actually pushed back, and I think at least in Frydenberg's case, definitely beaten Dutton to take over the party after the 2022 defeat. But all three of them were gone, wiped out of politics. I mean, two of them are gone completely. Frydenberg, Zimmerman, out of politics forever. Sharma has been relegated to the Senate. That's a whole video for That's a topic for a whole different video, the absolute roller coaster of his political career. But the point is, with all three of them gone, the party just kind of defaulted to Dutton's leadership. Look, I had been out of the Liberal Party for upwards of a year when the 2022 election came around. And when I was watching the results come in before Josh Frydenberg had lost, I knew, and everyone that I still know from the Liberal Party was aware, that after the election, it would be a leadership challenge between Frydenberg and Dutton to see who would lead the party into opposition. But as soon as it became clear that Koo Yong was going to fall to Monique Ryan, the Teal Independent, I just remember myself and everyone having this sort of gut feeling of, oh my God, what the hell is the party going to do now? And then I just remember thinking, is there literally anyone of any substance or profile within the party that could challenge Dutton? And then no. You go through the list, every potential challenger was losing to Teal independents, and it was, my God, this party is actually going to get taken over by Dutton in one of the biggest catastrophes I think I've ever seen. And then, of course, that skepticism and that concern was proven right when 2025 rolled around, and Dutton proved himself to be a profoundly incompetent leader of the opposition who, while he may have prevented factional infighting, kind of created a party that was appealing to, I would say, not a lot of Australians. and suffered the worst defeat of the Liberal Party since its formation in the aftermath of World War II. And not only was that an absolute defeat, but it also only further worsened the situation that the Liberal Party found itself in. In terms of future leadership being thrown out of the party for 2025, I think that the key moment was when Keith Wolahan lost the seat of Menzies in Melbourne, because Wolahan was very much held up by the moderate faction as the face of the future leadership. We're talking about somebody who has kind of the perfect resume to become a party leader. Prior to politics, he was an officer in the Australian Army. He was a barrister. He was a graduate of Cambridge, somebody who studied and spoke Mandarin, a person who in post-election analysis is very, very vocal about the fact that the Liberal Party cannot just hope and pray that there is some return to the Howard era, because that Australia does not exist. That if the Liberal Party wants to survive, it needs to appeal to young people, it needs to appeal to a multicultural Australia, and it needs to stop being in denial about the state of the country now. And he, thanks to Peter Dutton's leadership, got booted right out of Parliament. It is so weird how the Liberal Party suffered complete defeats in 2022 and in 2025, but in such different ways. 2022 being an enormous loss, mostly to Teal independents, losing to this new moderate centre-right challenger force, and that then being reinforced by a 2025 defeat, much more specifically and broadly to Labour. And those back-to-back defeats have done, honestly, I think, irreparable damage to the party. The amount of talent that vanishes when you lose upwards of 30 seats in the span of 2 elections is mind-boggling. And it's so unique. It's almost the exact opposite problem that the Liberal Party had between 2007 and 2019. I think in the aftermath of the Howard era, the real root cause of all of the Liberal Party's problems that haunted it all the way up until the end of ScoMo's term in office is that it had far too many ambitious people in the party who, for all their flaws in many different ways, knew how to play politics right, and it really crippled the party's ability to function well. I'm talking, of course, about the revolving door of prime ministers that came out of the Liberal Party in that era, or just leaders of the party, both in opposition and in government. And first of all, Tony Abbott, a man who I agree with on next to nothing politically, but who I have to say is possibly the greatest opposition leader in the history of this country. A man who, when he was in government and was tasked with building and creating things, was entirely out of his depth. But when he had a target in opposition to destroy, that being the Rudd-Gillard-Rudd government, he did it better than I think any other opposition leader in history. Now, of course, the Labour Party was in disarray, but Abbott's ability to message and drive home everything that was wrong with the Labour government led to the Liberal Party's greatest electoral success since the beginning of the Howard era back in 1996. But of course, when Abbott got into power, every weakness of his was exposed. His lack of clarity when it came to explaining any of his policies, his inability to accept defeat or to apologise on any level, his lacklustre leadership skills, and very quickly, the next great leadership talent of the Liberal Party, Malcolm Turnbull, used that to seize power. Malcolm Turnbull, the ever-ambitious technocrat, the man who was always the smartest person in the room, someone who had endless ambition, somebody who I think this is a George Brandis quote, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I believe it was put best when he said that Malcolm Turnbull did not get into politics to serve in somebody else's government. I've heard the Abbott-Turnbull rivalry referred to as if there were two bulls in the same pen, a situation where two men who were very clearly cut out to be leaders of the party just could not coexist with each other. There was too much ambition and too much desire to lead amongst two people that they just could not get along, causing endless conflict, which our third character, Scott Morrison, took advantage of to basically tear both of them down and put himself in as leader. So that is a third incredibly ambitious man that was somehow in the mix at the same time, leading to all this leadership chaos during those Liberal years. It's just funny. It's as if everyone in the Liberal Party wants to see themselves as the next Howard, the person who unites all the factions and has the party run stably. But no one's really come close to doing that at all. In the aftermath of the Howard era, it was just Liberals tearing each other apart, all trying to become leader at the same time, which eventually led to the party being in the state that it is currently in. And then in the aftermath of the Morrison time, there's just kind of a utter hole in the party where good leadership and good talent should be. And I think the reality of the situation is, unless by some miracle some talented senator makes a jump to the lower house and takes over the party, like a hypothetical Dave Sharma leadership, and that has its own host of problems. But unless something like that happens, I can't paint a good picture for the Liberals, because I feel like the next unifying figure that they desperately need to avoid the infighting, to actually fill that hole of talent in the party, by all odds, that leader probably isn't even in Parliament yet, and might not be until the mid-2030s.